This episode brought to you by RedStore. Built for MSPs, RedStore enables you to manage and protect data in the broadest range of environments, spanning modern and legacy infrastructure, whether on-prem or in the cloud, including cloud-native containerized workloads and an ever-widening array of SaaS applications, all through a single app with no hardware requirements. RedStore also delivers AI-powered malware detection to enable malware-free recoveries and eliminate downtime. To try RedStore free for 14 days, visit www.redstore.com to book a meeting.
You're entering the MSP Zone, a podcast for the managed services community, covering news, analysis, and interviews from around the globe. Elevate your MSP game by staying in the MSP Zone. And now, your host, Charles Weaver.
FBI warns of fake job postings used to steal money and personal information. Have you guys seen this? This is crazy stuff. We'll get to that today. It's not what we're going to talk about, but we'll mention it in our list of items to get through today. But welcome to the MSP Zone. First-time listeners, long-time listeners, we welcome you all. This is the place where you can hear information and analysis of things that you generally are not going to hear anywhere else. I feel very strongly about that because I don't see this stuff being posted anywhere else. I don't see other people talking about it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just what we are passionate about here at the MSP Alliance and what drives us every day. Anyway, welcome to the program, and here is what we are going to talk about today. We are going to talk about the economic outlook for 2022 for the managed services professional marketplace. And I know some of you business owners, some of you professionals, managers, directors, you're in the managed services market and you're wondering, wow, is this a new year? Weird things happening all around the world. You got inflation in some parts of the world, geopolitical unrest. You've got the stock market in most of the markets are fairly volatile, up and down. And what do you make of that? What is it that should we be concerned? Separate from whether you're concerned about whether your investments are going up and down, should we be concerned as MSPs? What does that mean for us as MSPs? Either business owners or professionals working for an MSP. Should I be concerned? You may be thinking all of these questions, and you'd be right to think all those questions. But today we're going to give you at least our analysis, our perspective. Over 22 years of doing this, having done this every single day, and only this, we're not perfect. We can't tell the future by any means, but we certainly have some, I would say, well-informed opinions on things, and you can maybe take use of that and use it for your own personal business planning. That's our plan for today. So let's just dive right in, and we will get to that FBI story very shortly. The first thing, we always do a end of the year review and summary, and then we typically do a beginning of the year outlook. And this is more of the beginning of the year outlook, even though it's in February. We have just been going through weird cycles in the last couple of years, not just because of the pandemic, but because of other things that have been happening. And it is quite natural, as I've said before, that for MSP professionals to question what is the role of the MSP in 2022? Is it still relevant? Is there still a future? And it would be A, boring, B, incomplete, and C, a dereliction of duty for me just to say, yes, MSPs are still relevant, and not give you evidence, not give you supporting evidence of why that's the case. And although my answer is yes, the MSPs are still incredibly relevant in 2022. The MSPs are even more relevant this year than they were in last year or previous years. The relevancy, the need for MSPs is increasing, not decreasing. That does not mean that we don't have challenges. And we certainly have, we've got significant challenges in some cases that need to be addressed squarely, head on, and discussed as a community and arrive at some consensus. And that is what we have been doing at the MSP Alliance for 22 years. We will continue to do that as long as we exist, or at least as long as I'm here. And so I don't want to make this just it's another year, MSPs are still in demand, blah, blah, blah. Okay, forget it, move on. No, yes, it's important to have some accurate optimism. And there's a lot of reasons that you MSP owners and operators and professionals ought to be optimistic about what you do. But we also need to be very realistic about what the challenges are that we face, and we need to address them, and we need to address some of them very, very quickly. So first of all, let's just talk economics, right? Let's just talk the straight scoop when it comes to the economy and where we are in terms of IT spending. And I don't know where the Gartner IT spending in 2022 is yet. I think that they had projections. I'm just doing a quick search here. It looks like a day, actually yesterday, Gartner worldwide IT spending to reach $4.5 trillion. I believe that is an increase, yes it is, of 5.1% compared to last year, with significant growth segments in enterprise software, most likely due to cloud convergence, cloud migration, and a few other areas. And we'll do some more digging into this later on. But the point is, look, the data's out there. At least if you don't like my interpretation, then go to Gartner yourself, look at their own analysis. I mean, I'm reading from a Network World article that, again, was just published yesterday, from what I could tell. And this seems to indicate that I'm giving you a direct quote, the managed and consultancy IT services market is in line for the second highest spending growth in 2022. It's expected to grow by 7.9% annually to roughly $1.28 trillion as businesses increase their reliance on external consultants to help with their cloud strategies. There you have it, straight from Gartner. I don't think there's any reason to doubt that. I think that, if anything, there's probably understated because, again, Gartner, as great as they are, as smart as those folks are, they don't have, as deep of a dive insight into the managed services market, and I'm talking above or below, I should say, the enterprise customers that subscribe to them, where a lot of their data comes from. But that doesn't mean that they're not wrong for the data that they do have. But my point is, there's a lot of money still with all the economic volatility in the stock market. Yes, with inflation, yes. But the point is, there's money still being spent on managed services. Why is there money being spent on managed services? Because companies need MSPs. Why do they need MSPs? Because they don't have the talent, they don't have the time, they don't have the resources, they don't have the experience to do all the things that they need to do to stay competitive in this day and age without an MSP helping them, without an MSP by their side. That's, I think, one of the greatest arguments for this profession is the economic justification for why you are all in the MSP profession to begin with still exists, even now in early part of 2022. And I'm not saying that the economic situation is going to do one thing or another. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I'm talking the general, stock market. I don't know what's going to happen with inflation. I mean, some people are saying it's going to, tail off at some point here as interest rates potentially get increased. Who knows? We'll see. But what I do know is that the underlying business characteristics and drivers still are present to indicate that MSPs do have a very critical role to play in the global market, wherever you may practice your craft. And that's a good sign. That's an incredibly good sign. The inflationary elements that are undeniable, and we talked about this last year. We talked about whether or not there was going to be an inflationary impact on managed services. And I still think that and I expect that MSP World will produce an incredible amount of insight. Maybe not consensus, but I hope so. I hope so. But at least some insight into where the MSPs stand related to their pricing to counteract the inflationary pressures that they face, especially those in North America. And that somewhat relates to the issue of labor and the labor market. And here in the U.S., and I know that we have global listeners from all over the place, including Canada and Western Europe and Australia and other places. And by the way, I'm not ignoring those places. I just stay focused on the things that are close here at home. And these indicators do, from time to time, impact the global market. And I do try at all points to talk about the managed services profession in a global capacity, meaning that there's not one thing that is unique only to this country or state. I try to make things universally applicable, is my point. But there are some economic factors that are certainly more country specific because of their monetary policy and what have you. But the labor market globally in managed services in security specifically is incredibly tight. The technical talent just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist to meet the number of open jobs that exist. Let's put it that way. We need more. And we need more people. We need more bodies. We need more people who understand managed services. It's not just, I want to be very clear here. It's not that we need more security people, because there are a ton of institutions pumping out security right now. And, they're doing good work, but the MSPs are a unique group and they need more. And when you look at the story about the FBI saying that there are fake job profiles being posted, and here's a quote. The FBI warns that malicious actors or, quote, scammers continue to exploit security weaknesses on job recruitment websites to post fraudulent job postings in order to trick applicants into providing personal information or money. Now, I would hope that a security professional would not fall prey to that type of a scam, but this is one of those headwinds that I've referenced before, which is this is the last thing we need in a already tight job market is this type of scam that would potentially scare off either job seekers or job creators. And I'll post a link to the story if you guys want to read it. But back to the outlook issue. One of the headwinds or one of the challenges that we're going to address this year, and we've got we've got a solution, and the members have been very vocal over the last 5 years, probably more than 5 years. I remember we were in Washington, D.C., and we had one of our executive dinners, MSP networking dinners, and there's a group of MSP professionals there, and I wanted to talk about something completely different. I don't remember what it was, but it was something else. And then all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4 hours later, it went on for at least 3 hours, the dinner. The conversation was almost entirely consumed with, where are we getting the MSP professionals of tomorrow? And that was their concern. And this is at least 5+ years ago. All right, so this is not a new concept. This is not something that we are unfamiliar with. But even back then, it was an issue, and it's become even more of an issue today. It's not just security, it's where do we find MSP talent, MSP-specific talent. And that's something you're going to see from MSP Alliance this year. We're going to act on this. We do have a solution, and we're pretty excited about it. And it's going to address this, legacy issue that, again, has existed for many, many years. And we've been gathering feedback. We've been trying to figure out, how do we do this, not just on a state-by-state basis, on a country-by-country basis, but how do we really make this so that MSPs specifically can get the information, MSP candidates can get the information that they need in order to be better suited for the positions that they're going to fill in the MSP marketplace. And that is an issue. That's an issue for 2022, and we're going to have to figure it out together. You can't have, I think the job numbers came out through ADP this morning, something like 301,000 jobs were cut or lost in January. Now, maybe that was the post-holiday, ramp up where people hire for November and December for the holidays, and then they let those jobs go. Maybe that's the case. There's smarter people than I who think that might be a reasonable explanation. But the point is that you do have this undeniable spending surge and continued growth in spending in managed services and security, by the way. But we've got some constraints on the supply side, the human supply side, that are going to have to be addressed. And you've heard on this program, we've had guests here who've talked about robotic process automation. We've talked about increasing scale and efficiency in your MSP practice. I mean, these things aren't just the nice to haves anymore. These things are you must do this if you want to survive. Because otherwise you're going to be facing, it would be like someone with, selling shovels in the gold rush days and then running out of shovels, and you can't find any more shovels. You can't make any more shovels. And then you've got a whole bunch of people saying, I want to buy a shovel from you, and you've got no shovel. And they go on to the next tent and they buy a shovel from that person. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the one MSP shop that can't scale their practice, that can't hire the right people, and can't keep up with the demand of your customers who are clearly wanting more and more and more from you. And that is, if you're saying, well, why are we seeing this growth? Why do we continue to see it? Gartner says we're going to see growth because of cloud, right? That's pretty generic, and that's pretty true. It's accurate. It's been accurate for the last 10 years. But what's specific about it? Well, I'll tell you what's specific about it. That story about the FBI posting the warning about scam artists trying to rope in through fake job postings to steal people's information is symptomatic. It's one of many, many examples that we could find for you that indicate why MSPs are so important today. We are almost surrounded, figuratively, virtually. We're surrounded virtually by cyber attackers, people who want to do bad things to us at a professional and a personal level. And I think everybody knows that. This is like not new to people anymore. They see it. And so in the professional community, in the business community at least, they understand that in order to combat that, they need the help of external parties, and that's where the MSPs come in. So this is not going to go away. I mean, we're going to continue to get hammered on the cyber front until we something happens, and maybe it'll never happen, but I think it will happen, and we will ultimately win. But the MSPs need to be prepared for the growth, and they need to be thinking ahead, planning ahead, strategizing, and figuring out not only where they're going to hire their next, not one person, but 5 or 10 people. How are they going to get them trained? How are they going to get them onboarded? How are they going to leverage them to deliver even more scalable services to their customers? How are they going to make their customers more secure as their customers are starting to get impacted by things like that Pennsylvania bill that was just passed a little while ago, or the Louisiana MSP registration law that went into effect last year, and the many other MSP relevant laws that are currently being deliberated for passage and potentially ultimately being signed into law. There's a lot of activity impacting, mostly for the good, the MSP market. So what would I be doing if I was an MSP looking at 2022? Maybe you're still in the final stages of putting together your business plan for this year. Maybe you haven't even started putting your business plan together. I don't know. Hopefully you started. This is what I would be doing. I would be planning for growth. I would be looking at my internal technology stack, my service capabilities. And I would be saying, how relevant am I as an MSP to my customers in 2022, knowing that they are likely being, hit hard on a cyber front, on a security front, and what can I do to make their life easier? And if you don't have a really good answer to that, you may want to think about getting one fast. Like if a hypothetical customer or a real customer for that matter came up to you and said, "Hey, how can you guys help me in 2022 be a better, more secure widget manufacturer," whatever that your customer does. If you don't have a really compelling story and a really compelling answer with specifics, I'm sorry to tell you, but there's going to be a lot of other MSPs who will have a far more effective and better response than yours. And so you don't want to be in that position of not having a good response, not having a good security message to tell to all of your customers and prospects. This is what I would recommend for you to do in 2022. And if you want even more guidance, more suggestions, I've got a good one. And we've been using this a lot in the MSP Verify program, because there's a lot of MSPs who come to us and say, "Hey, I know I should be worried about compliance, but I'm really concerned about just being better at internal security and operations and efficiencies." And so they go through MSP Verify to get those things and to improve upon those things. And one of the things that we've observed is that those MSPs, like right in the middle, as they're of that project and that program, and they're learning how to document process, how they're learning how to implement controls that will make them more secure. They almost always come back and say, "Wow, we could sell this to our customers." And yeah, you could, and you should. And it's like a light turns on when they realize that the things that they do internally as an MSP can also be applied very nicely and cleanly to their customers, their managed services customers. And that's what I would recommend for 2022. And if you're already doing this, if you're already doing that, great. You're well ahead of the curve. You're probably in the top 5-10% of MSPs operating globally. Doesn't mean that you're perfect. There's probably, I'm sure, other things that you should be focused on and challenges that you need to be addressing. But there's a lot of the 90% out there. I mean, obviously, if you're in the 90%, you're in the majority. But I think a vast majority of MSPs are in the position of needing to both internally improve their security, but also understand what those security improvements are, why they're important, and then immediately begin to push them downstream to their customers so their customers can benefit from them. Because if the MSPs aren't doing them, most likely the customers aren't either. I mean, it's rare that I see a managed services operation that does better for their customers than they do internally. I know they exist, but if the MSP isn't proficient internally, chances are they're not going to be proficient selling and delivering that service externally, if that makes sense. So, on the M&A side, just to wrap things up, I think that at least here in the United States, there's been a lot of pressure moving towards this capital gains increase that seems, for the time being, to have evaporated. So for the time being, it appears that there may not be an increase in capital gains, and so for the moment, it seems like the pressure to rush to a deal ended for a lot of organizations. Now, that doesn't mean that investors aren't still incredibly interested in the MSP market. In fact, I was watching or heard on one of the morning financial news shows that they're talking, if you're tired of the volatility of the stock market, look to tech. And they specifically call out, the private equity and private money interests that are putting a lot of investment into the managed services marketplace globally because they view it, rightfully so, as a lucrative market for the foreseeable future. So whether that means that M&A deal flow might slow down, I'm not saying that necessarily. I think wouldn't be surprised if it pulled back a little bit. But I still think that deal valuation is increasing, again, for all the reasons that we've already gone over. So to summarize, I think 2022 is going to be another great year. I think it's going to be, however, a tale of kind of two MSPs. You're going to have the MSPs who've got it together. They've got all the necessary requirements that we would look for in MSP Verify, right? They've got the documentation, they've got the process, they've got the internal controls. They can evidence those processes, controls very easily, both to auditors and to customers, including to insurance companies. They have the ability to scale their MSP practice. They understand how to automate. They understand how to have good internal checks and balances to make sure that they are protected from ransomware and other risks that may impact them. And they certainly have a really good story to tell, and they know how to tell it vis-a-vis the the benefits that they provide as an MSP organization to their customers. And they have a plan when asked, when the customer says, I don't want to end up on news and be that company that got hit by ransomware. Well, the good MSPs have a really good answer to that question. The MSPs that don't have an answer to that and don't have that comfort, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I'm not saying that it's going to be a bad year for you, but I do think that you need to get your internal house in order. And you'd be surprised at how much easier it becomes. It never is, just a cakewalk. It's never, a straightforward process being an MSP, but it can be a lot easier than some MSPs face it right now. I'll tell you that. Being better at efficiency, scalability, automation, documented controls, the whole list of best practices that we now know are proven, they matter. They matter greatly, and they have a big impact on the MSP morale, financial performance, technical performance, security performance, all down the line. And all of that is transferable to customers as well. So I would be fairly optimistic about this year. I would especially be optimistic if you have those things already in place or are working towards them. If you don't have those things in place, I would say hope is not all lost, but I would start sooner rather than later trying to get those controls and policies and procedures in place, because you don't want to leave all this money on the table. You don't want to be the last MSP in line. There's just too much at stake. There's more demand out there than there are qualified MSPs. I've said that for a number of years. I continue to say it because I believe it continues to be a true statement. But I think 2022 is going to be a fantastic year. Not without its challenges, certainly. But I think it's going to be a great year for MSPs and for this great profession. And, only time will tell. But we'll keep our eye on it. We'll keep bringing you information and analysis as we see it. If you have questions, you have comments for us, we would love to hear from you. Send us an email, mspzone@mspalliance.com. Drop us a line. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us your thoughts. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you will get notified when future episodes are released. We will see you next time in the MSP Zone.